You are now being recorded.
Savannah, whilst we're doing that, I wondered if I could just say just a couple of words about Melanie before she starts her opening remarks. Because I guess we just wanted to sort of acknowledge how pleased we are to have you here today. Very, very pleased to introduce Professor Melanie Nind. Thank you so much for coming today. Melanie is a Professor of Education at the University of Southampton, and she is, I'm sure you would agree, a passionate advocate for people with learning disabilities, and particularly those with profound and multiple needs. And really, you know, you're a leading voice in the development of inclusive and participatory ways of research alongside those with learning disabilities. And we were lucky enough to meet Melanie, I think it was about over a year ago now at a conference. And I think we were very struck by the sort of shared values that underlay the work that we're all doing here today. And it really has been a sort of honour to begin working with Melanie on developing some projects. And yes, we just wanted to say how much we've appreciated her sort of her wisdom, her kindness and her generosity in supporting and working with us. So I just wanted to say that, but without further ado, we'll of course hand over to Melanie for the opening remarks.
Thank you so much for those warm words. And what you didn't say is Melanie is also rubbish at technology. Are you seeing my slides at the moment? Yes, and just the first one, moving on. Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So it's lovely to be here, to be invited to say a few words. I can see there's quite a few people here, which is wonderful. I've even seen the odd name or two that I know. Hello, Gary, which is lovely. I'm going to be speaking today from experience mostly. I think speaking from experience is always the best place to speak from. So let me tell you a little bit about my story and how I connect with making positive moves and moving on. So my first slide here shows you, shows where I worked as a 22-year-old freshly qualified teacher. I went to work in my first post in a long stay hospital called Harperbury. Some of you will know Harperbury. It's near Sale Barnes. It's near where Leavesden was, around that M25 belt where there were lots and lots of hospitals. And I worked at that school for 4 years within the grounds of the long stay hospital. Everybody else lived there. I went home at the end of the day, of course, so my experience was very different from someone who was living there. But nonetheless, Harperbury had a huge impact on me. It's in my blood now. 40 years later, it's in my blood still. During the 1950s, ahead of my time, Harperbury was much bigger. It had about 1,500 beds, as they called it, people living there. It became very overcrowded as people were moved into the hospitals. But I was there in the 80s, and then there were still about 800 people living there. But the numbers had gone down because of something called an ordinary life. And the policy changed to try to give people a more ordinary life and to move people out of the hospitals from so-called villas. This is a villa. It's a photo taken since it was closed down, so it wasn't boarded up at the time. But people lived in villas for men or for women, either side of a big main road. So the men and the women were divided. And yeah, it was a huge kind of, I was there in the time of a huge transformation. So I kind of have a sense of what it is to move on. I'm no longer a special school teacher. I'm a researcher and a professor of education. But we take our history with us, don't we? And some of what I remember from Harperbury is the people. You know, I remember the buildings, I remember the isolation, I remember the atmosphere of the place. But mostly I have very, very positive memories of the people. And I think anybody who's moved on from a hospital like that kind of has some special images of people in their mind when they look back. This is Christine. I remember how she changed my life. Other things about my time working in a long stay institution, and it was an institution. I remember the emotion of being completely overwhelmed, just overwhelmed by the size of the place, the kind of despair in the place sometimes. And I can remember very strongly thinking, if I'm going to survive a few years working here, some things are going to have to change. And I was very privileged to be part of a group of people who really took on the kind of change agenda. By the time I left Harperbury and working with the likes of Patrick, who sat on the knee of me at 22 there, we had changed from trying to get people to do things that we thought were expected of them. We moved on to working in much more humane ways and making as our privilege, our priority, our absolute priority, making relationships with the people who lived in Harperbury, supporting them to kind of find some joy in life, find some joy in human relationship. And all of the time when I was there, people were beginning to move out, and you saw people leave places where they'd lived all of their lives, or certainly from early childhood. And as I say, it was a very kind of emotional time in a way. It was very affected me for the rest of my life, I think. And I learned so much from the people who lived there, much more from the people than I did from the people who worked there. The people who lived there, who couldn't kind of speak or advocate for themselves, they really taught me to listen, different ways of listening to their needs primarily. They also taught me to be playful and to connect, and what it was to kind of try to understand their experiences and what it was like for them. Strangely enough, I also learned at Harperbury to belong, to survive in a closed institution. You kind of have to find your way, and that those of us who were often young teachers in our early posts really learned to belong with each other, with the community there, to find ways to keep going in, to make sense of the life we were living. And strangely enough, for my next move, I moved on after 4 years to go and work in a London community special school where people lived in their families and they came to school each day. And I struggled to belong, because there wasn't that same sense of shared values, of struggle to change things for the better. So moving on is a strange thing, I think. Whoever you are, it comes with its challenges. I do hope my slides are moving on. Okay, so these images that you're seeing now, these are images of Harperbury taken in the new millennium, a decrepit, falling down place. Because, 40 years on, I have grey hair, the buildings are falling down. I think it was 2001 that the hospital was finally closed. Oh, somebody is saying they can't see the slides changing. Are you not seeing them? somebody come on their microphone?
They're changing for me.
Are you seeing the old building?
Yeah.
Yep, same here.
Maybe
Yeah,
you might need to go out and come back in.
Yeah.
You can actually arrow through the slides. Because I've managed to do that from mine. So I think people can take control and do their own slides, navigating forward at the bottom. Don't know if anyone knows.
Oh,
they can do
wow.
that. You learn something new.
Learn something new every day. Yeah. So as I say,
if you do change, sorry, just briefly, if you do change the slides yourself, then you're on the slide you choose and not the one the presenter is talking about.
Yeah.
So you need to go back to the presenter slide. There's an option for that as well, if you want to see the one that's related to the presenter.
Thank you very much, everybody. I never panic about technology because there's always someone in the room who knows more about it than you do. Okay, so the slide I'm sharing shows a very, very rundown Harperbury. And as I was saying, in 2001, with just 200 people left living there, it was closed its doors as a long stay institution. But some of the buildings were still used. The old administration block, the hall, the storerooms, the laundry. These then became occupied by Hertfordshire Partnership NHS Trust, who kind of took over. And then in May 2009, the building itself became a mental health facility. And I was very shocked to find that a friend of mine's young daughter, who was experiencing anorexia, found herself living in a building in Harperbury site. So buildings move on as well as people move on in their purpose. But during this time, an ordinary life as a policy kind of mission, a motto for how we should do things was getting stronger and stronger. And people were finding ways to kind of have a more ordinary life that didn't involve sharing a dormitory with 40 other people, didn't involve having a lock on your door that locked you in for some people, didn't involve wearing other people's clothes and stuff that went on in those days. So my story at Harperbury is actually a very small story. It was a small part of my life in terms of years, a big part of my life in terms of impact. The stories you hear at the conference today will be more up-to-date stories. There'll be more powerful stories. But I think there is something very important about sharing our stories. Absolutely important that people's stories are shared. So, sorry, just finding my notes. What you have here in the images is Matt with the microphone at a conference. Matt was someone with learning disabilities who worked with us on a joint project. And you have Johanna who has profound and multiple learning disabilities, enjoying music with her young nephew. When I moved on from Harperbury, I moved into research after some time working in further education colleges. And one of the things that I took forward from Harperbury into research was the need to listen, and that people speak in different ways. So sometimes it's giving people the stage at a conference to share their findings, as I think people will do in this conference today. And sometimes it's learning to listen to non-verbal voices, to listen to facial expressions and sounds and body posture. And I don't think anybody would fail to understand that Johanna is enjoying the experience of music with her little nephew here. I think listening is part of the spirit of making positive moves that you'll really appreciate during the course of the day. So some of what I've been researching is belonging. What does it mean to belong? I said I felt a strange sense of belonging at Harperbury. the belonging of survival, the belonging of making sense of something. Belonging stayed with me as a kind of theme, something we need to understand. I was very aware that sometimes when the people moved out of Harperbury, they struggled, absolutely struggled to fit in with people who didn't know them, didn't know their histories, didn't understand what was in their pasts. And I've come to understand belonging as a really important idea, a really important thing to strive for. So whether it's an ordinary life or a very extraordinary life, whatever your life is, you need to feel a sense of belonging with people, with what's going on in that life. And if you don't feel like you belong, then sometimes what you need is a place of refuge. In the next slide, you'll see an image of a big yellow tent. This big yellow golden tent was a place of refuge that a researcher I know, the wonderful Jill Goodwin, who's both a researcher and an installation artist and an ex-special school teacher like me, who in the end didn't feel like they belonged working in special schools because they didn't share, she didn't share the values enough, the kind of setup. But she constructed Golden Tent as a place for people to go into, as a place of refuge, and to just be, to just kind of quieten and be calm and have time just to be. And I love the idea of places of refuge. And I wonder if today during the conference people will think of refuges, safe places that they go. Andrew Power, a colleague of mine's research about places, has lovely examples of people living in the community and the places that they feel they belong. One person's story was the fish and chip shop, because when they went to the fish and chip shop on a Friday night, there was always somebody who greeted them by name with a huge smile and a, oh, you're here again, it's Friday, it's lovely to see you. And these are senses of belonging. We also need to be able to express ourselves. And the other image in this slide is of some artwork by somebody with profound disabilities, just finding colour and movement and marks on a page. And that comes from the work of Melania Warwick, who did some wonderful art-based projects. So I don't know what I've said is how what I've said is useful to you. They are just opening remarks. They're ideas from my story that connect with the story of the conference today. When I was doing research about life in COVID-19 lockdown, which I'm sure people will remember very clearly, one of the things that intrigued me was people taking photographs of empty supermarket shelves, taking photographs of toilet paper because it became very hard to get hold of toilet paper at some times, just taking photographs of how odd life had become during lockdown. And one researcher wrote about that, taking photographs as a means of saying, I am here in this place of uncertainty. So it's putting down that marker, I am here. It's all weird. I can't quite make sense of it. Everything's changing, but I'm here and I'm kind of trying to make my mark, trying to capture it, remember it, understand it. So I'm sure there will be a sense for people in the conference today of I'm here, wherever here may be, and trying to think about ideas of belonging, place, refuge. And I could see while I was talking all sorts of intriguing questions and comments coming up on the slide. So I'd like to have a quick look at those, but I'll stop sharing my slides now if I can.
So I've got a summary of the comments and questions, if you would like me to read them out for you.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So Gary asked, did the people in Harperbury Hospital afraid to move in the community?
Sorry, I'm still trying to stop sharing. I won't
that's okay.
show you. What do you do to stop sharing? It's usually stop share, isn't it? Oh, stop sharing. Thank you. That's better. I can see you now. So, sorry, what was Gary's question?
So Gary was asking if the people in Harperbury were afraid to move into the community from when you were working there.
Very hard to know, Gary, about the fear, because the people I was working with couldn't put their thoughts, feelings and stuff into words. At the time in the 80s, people weren't given visits out to see where they were going. None of that preparation work went on really. Then people would wake up one morning living on a ward with 40 other people, and the next morning wake up in a small group home. And sometimes very little notice, sometimes very often people came back. I don't think they had the time or the information to feel fear at the thought of going out. I know that when people went out, some people flourished and some people, yes, had a whole kind of gamut, whole range of emotions. Yeah.
And there was also a comment about from Gary again saying he would love to do a TV documentary on the history of long stay hospitals. And I think Sam shared that there's videos on YouTube of people exploring the old Harperbury site. And as well, there was another comment about how there needs to be memorials to people who lived and died in these hospitals.
Yes. And there is a group, the Social History of Learning Disability group. It comes out from the Open University. And these are social historians that are making sure that we don't forget. We don't forget our histories. We don't forget what life was like for people with learning disabilities. And they do also remind us that the living in a hospital has only actually been a minority thing. It features big in the official histories, but more people stayed living at home with their families. And social history, you know, we do need these documentaries, we do need memorials, we need to know what it was like. One of the things that people with learning disabilities doing history, their own social history, taught me, and I never knew it, was that during World War II, if you know about children being evacuated from the towns out into the countryside so they weren't bombed, children with learning disabilities were never evacuated. They stayed in these institutions, and the institutions were used for other people to stay in the towns. So, you know, social history is an important thing, and we mustn't forget other people's histories as well as our own histories. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Mel. A really brilliant way to start the conference, sharing with us some of your own history connected to Harperbury. And yeah, I think that probably leads on really nicely. Joan and I are going to be talking next, and Joan is the kind of inspiration for the Making Positive Moves project, because 10 years ago, Joan and I met when Joan was moving out of hospital, weren't you, Joan?
Yeah.
So I'm going to share some slides now, and then Joan and I are going to tell you a little bit about how the project began. So just bear with me. You can let me know. Let me just skip to the right slide. And then you can let me know if it's working properly. There we go. So people should be able to see the setting the scene slide. Is that working now?
Yes.
I can't see any nods. Thank you. When we've got the slides on, it won't show me people's faces. So thank you. So Joan, so it's very, very poignant that I am sitting here today in Joan's front room. We're doing the conference from Joan's living room. And this is a photograph of 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Joan.
Yeah.
So who's in the photograph?
Hamid, Sharon, Kara, me, Lisa, and my social worker.
Yeah, so there's the 6 of us with, I think this is just a few days after you moved, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Joan and I met in the hospital in Derbyshire, and there's some other people on the meeting today I know that also supported in those early days for Joan to move back to Hertfordshire. And it had been 37 years. So Joan was one of the first people that I met that was moving, and Joan had created a video to tell us the story of her life in hospital. And then when you moved to your home here, you made another video, didn't you?
Yeah.
What was in that video?
Videos was that when I moved, I wanted my own house, my own garden, and my dog.
And how close have you got to those things, Joan?
I got really close to a happy house and my garden, and fortunately I borrowed a dog.
So Joan, you had a wonderful dog that you borrowed, didn't you?
Yeah, lovely dog.
Friends, and you would look after the dog and have the dog overnight?
Yeah.
Yeah, so very sadly the dog passed away last year, didn't he, at Christmas? But Joan has kind of managed to have those dreams, which I think we all agree are pretty ordinary dreams. They're things that all of us want in our lives, but for Joan, for 37 years, weren't a part of your life. They were things that you only hoped for.
Yeah.
So we thought that Joan and I were talking this morning about this photograph and Joan's face in the photograph, which looks like sort of terrified but really excited.
Yeah.
And we felt like that connects with what Gary was saying just now about were people afraid. You know, for you, Joan, it was a big scary thing.
It was a big scary thing, yeah.
And also hugely exciting.
Yeah.
Joan is one of the people that's absolutely flourished since moving to your home, aren't you? You're somebody who's had so many fantastic sort of opportunities since then. And one of the things that Joan has so kindly done after inspiring the research is sort of taking part in it throughout. So we've known Joan. That 10 years ago that we met, I thought we really need to tell these stories. I met Joan and many other people who were moving, and not everybody had such an easy time in terms of finding that move kind of what they wanted. They maybe didn't kind of find that the support was working for them in the community. And for some people, they ended up back in hospital. And so we thought those stories need to be told, and we need to understand what is it that people with learning disabilities need to help them to move. So that was an original project that we did. And then that original project, which was done by Annabelle Head, who is on the conference today, was so incredible as a piece of research that as a team, we thought we've got to do something more with this. And we applied for grant funding. And Joan was with us all along that way, so helping us to by doing interviews for us, but in the bits between when we weren't doing research, Joan was also helping us to think about what should we do next. So we've done a few slides of the things that Joan's been a part of in the research. So designing the logo, Joan.
Yeah.
This is all Joan's work. And then so Joan chose the pictures, and then actually Annabelle's sister drew the artwork for it. So Joan, can you tell us about what the key represents for you on the logo?
The key relates that I got my own house, my own front door. I can go in my own front door, relax, not having what to do, you know, get told what to do. I could relax, I could watch telly, I could go out, and then if I wanted to, I could stay out and then come in when I wanted to. I didn't have that when I was locked up. It was a bit scary, but I I got to do it. You know, I had so much fun, so much happiness. I felt relief that I could do things like I wanted to do.
Fantastic, Joan, thank you. And then you were also involved in building the website.
Yeah.
So we worked together to build a website for people with learning disabilities who were moving. So I think, Joan, from the beginning of the project, do you want to tell people a bit about why you wanted to be a part of this project?
I wanted to be part of it to help people to come out of hospital. I felt that I needed to help them because where I was in South Barn, there was people who couldn't talk, couldn't sit up, couldn't wash themselves, couldn't do anything. And I felt sad. I felt, you know, and it remembered me when I was out, you know, when I was there, how it felt. But I just wanted to help people to get out of hospital and do things for themselves and have that sort of a happy life. I'm glad that Lisa come and talked to me about it because it was really good that I knew I could help people.
Thank you, Joan. So the website, the intention behind the website was all developed out of our original research, and it was to do exactly that, wasn't it, Joan? To make sure that people could have access to information that might help them with the process of moving. And then the most exciting bit of our work together has come right at the end of the project, where we've been making an animation. And tell us a bit about what we're doing in this photograph, Joan.
We're recording my story about coming out of hospital and getting used of being outside, not, you know, doing things that I wanted to do, like shopping, going out, not being sort of scared. I knew people would be scared because I was, but it took a long time to get used to being outside, but it was really great. I'm pleased that maybe that my story would go round and they would help other people to come out and look at the world.
Thank you, Joan. So Joan has, from the beginning, inspired the project, and now when we show the animation in a minute, you'll see that Joan is the voice of making positive moves now as well. And through Joan's story, we and the other people who took part in our research, we created a sort of collective story. That's sort of what the research helps us to do, to pull together everybody's stories about their experiences and to tell a collective story about what it's like to live in the community after being in hospital. And people have been telling us about what makes it possible for them to have the best life that they can. So we are going to go straight into showing you the animation. This is extremely exciting for the project team. We sort of knew that we wanted to do something really special with the findings. Unfortunately, because of the funding we had for our website quite a few years ago now, we were able to produce this animation working with a brilliant team who you saw in the last photo, who have totally understood the project and have invited us down to London to do the recording, didn't they?
Yeah.
So this is the first official showing of our final animation. Let me know. I'm just going to stop sharing for a second and come back to this slide because I know that I haven't. Oh, hang on, I can do it from here. The technology is great. So hopefully I'm now sharing the audio. It won't, the sound won't come on until the second slide when you see Joan introducing herself. So I'm going to play it now, but let me know if there's any problems with the sound.
My name is Joan. This is our research about how people with learning disabilities can move out of hospital and live their best life in their own home. Based on interviews with 24 people with learning disabilities, including me, we identified 4 key supports that are needed to form a strong foundation in order for people to live their best life. These 4 supports are my strong foundation, and we created a model that describes how these supports work both individually and together. These supports are feeling safe in my relationships, making my own choices, belonging and keeping busy, and feeling happy with who I am. Feeling safe in my relationships. Feeling safe is the most important thing. I know my staff team really well and they listen to me. I trust them and I feel safe to talk about how I feel, which really helps. Some people didn't feel listened to, and this really damaged their foundation. Making my own choices. All of us want to make our own decisions. Not getting to choose can be very frustrating. It is a big step and gives us our freedom, but we also understand that sometimes we need help to make good decisions. We trust in our support team. We can make choices that help us live our best lives. Belonging and keeping busy. For me, belonging is an important part of my foundation. I really enjoy being part of the community and chatting with neighbours. They are all very nice. I am lucky. I found it important to have a routine, go outside and take part in activities too. And many of us would like a job. Feeling happy with who I am. The final part of my foundation was feeling happy with who I am. For most of us, hospital gave us a bad story about ourselves. But now that we are doing so much more and with the right people around us, we all feel so much happier about ourselves and proud of how far we have come. In summary, the overall finding are that people with learning disability who have moved out of hospital need these strong foundations they build with their support team. However, if these needs are not met, our foundation can crash and we can't live our life. All of our foundations are built differently, but we all need them to live our life well. And when one of them is strong, these others get stronger too. I work really hard with my staff and other important people in my life to create my foundation and keep them strong. I feel really proud of everything I have done and how far I have come. And it feels brilliant to have my freedom.
For more information, please visit our website www.makingpositivemoves.org. or email the research team using the address hello@makingpositivemoves.org. Thank you for watching our animation. My name is Louisa and I am the Chief Investigator for Making Positive Moves. On behalf of the research team, we would like to say a huge thank you to all of the people with learning disabilities and their supporters who contributed to Making Positive Moves and shared their stories with such honesty, trust and courage. It has been an honour to hear these stories, and we will work together to make sure that these stories are heard. Special thanks go to Joan, who inspired Making Positive Moves and has supported us throughout and provided the wonderful narration for this animation. So that is the overall findings of the project and the animation that we've done. And as you can imagine, as somebody who started this 10 years ago in Joan's living room, it's a really emotional moment for me sharing that animation from Joan's living room. It's, you know, Joan has been a part of the project throughout, and to be able to do something which has kind of allowed us to share Joan's story in the way that she hoped, and hopefully help more people as we go on to the next steps of the project, just feels really, really important, doesn't it, Joan?
Yes, it does.
So that's the end of mine and Joan's presentation, and I think we're going to hand over to Helen to tell you a bit more about what we did and how we did it in terms of the research. But I'm noticing all of these fantastic comments coming in, Joan, saying well done to you, great work, fantastic animation.
Thank you.
So everyone, yeah, so impressed by what you've done. So thank you so much again for all your hard work.
Thank you so much, Louisa and Joan. I think that's going to be a really hard bit to follow because it was so wonderful. But I guess I wanted to tell you a little bit about the kind of behind the scenes of the project. So how we got to this point where we've got all of our results and we've created this animation. So this is the sort of behind the scenes look, and I'm just going to share my screen and show you a few slides to show you that. Okay. Can I just check you can all see that all right? Come through.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
It's Helen, it's showing like as your PowerPoint, like not as the presentation, if that makes sense.
Okay, let me put my PowerPoint on. Okay, how's that?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, good. So as Joan and Louisa spoke about, in this project, we really wanted to find out what it was like for people with learning disabilities who had moved out of hospital to be living in their own homes in the community. And there were two really key questions that we wanted to ask. What is helping people to be able to stay living in the community, and what is making it harder? And we wanted to answer those questions with people's stories. So it was talking directly to people with learning disabilities who had had this experience that was so important to us. Okay. And the reason, you know, that we feel that this project was so important is because, you know, since the Transforming Care agenda started in 2015, you know, there were a lot of people who did move out of hospital, but in February 2023, there were still over 2,000 people living in hospital. And we hope that by finding out about what it is that helps people to live in the community, we can help more of those people to move out of hospital. And you know, if you look at the research and the evidence and the policy, what we noticed was that often people with learning disabilities who had had this direct experience were not central enough to our understanding of what helps. And so this project was, you know, one small way of trying to ensure that those people's voices were right in the center of the agenda, right in the center of what we understand about how people can live successfully and living their best lives in the community. So that they were the kind of foundations of the project. And as Joan said in the animation, the way we found out about people's experiences was to talk with 24 people who had moved from a mental health hospital to the community. And we started talking to people back in December 2020. So that was during the COVID pandemic. So we did a lot of talking to people over Zoom and over Teams when we weren't able to talk to people in person. And then we finished collecting all of this information through our interviews with people in June 2023. And we talked to people with learning disabilities who'd had this experience of moving out of hospital from all over England, Hertfordshire, London, Devon, Kent, Norfolk, Coventry and Warwick. As I say, we used interviews to talk to people. When we first met with people, we had 2 interviews with them. The first, they could choose to come and speak with us just themselves. And in the second interview, we asked if they would like to bring a key support person along to talk to us as well. And we spoke to people for about 4 hours each, some a bit more, some a bit less. So we spoke to people twice in that first year, and then we came back a year later and we spoke to people on 2 more occasions, which is sort of how we make up that 4 hours. And of the 24 people who spoke to us at the first time, 17 of those joined us again a year later to talk to us about how their life had changed and evolved over that kind of year-long period. So if you can imagine, with 4 hours of talking with each of our participants, what we ended up with was a really huge body of really rich information about what was helping people to live their lives and to live their best lives in the community. We wanted to make sure that people who wanted to take part in making positive moves could take part, and to make it as inclusive as we could, we took a very personalized approach to the project. We made sure that people who might be interested to take part were always approached to start with by somebody that they already knew. So it wasn't a sort of research team member who they'd never met before. It was somebody who was already kind of in their kind of support network. We also made sure that we had lots of introductory meetings with that potential participant so that they could really understand the project and really think about whether it was right for them to take part. So that might have been one meeting, but it could have been more than one meeting if that was what the person would like to have. And then we planned, when people said that they did want to take part, we planned a really flexible interview that took into account the ways in which they wanted to talk to us about their experiences. So some people took photographs of where they were living and things that they were doing, and they spoke to us about those photographs in an interview. We saw pictures and drawings. People could use signs. people could meet with us, just them, or they could meet with us with support. And we also used what I think are kind of quite innovative ways of speaking to people. So and what we did is, as a team, a lot of us were people who were working with learning disabilities in our kind of wider jobs. So we did draw on some of the ideas we had there to ensure that we were able to get really the richest data from our participants. And we did that by interviewing people on the second occasion with a key support person that they chose to kind of come along to the interview with them. And what we did is we asked that key support person to sort of step into the shoes of the person with a learning disability and answer as if they were them. Okay, and this is a sort of a technique called internalized other interviewing. And it was kind of funny to start with, and people were kind of like, oh, I don't know how to do that, but but everybody kind of gave it a go. And then we were able to then do, once the KSP had sort of said their words in the voice of the person with a learning disability, talking about what they felt their experience was, we then turned back to the person with a learning disability, our sort of primary participant, and we asked them what they thought of what the KSP had told us. And what we were able to do through that kind of way of talking together was for the person with a learning disability to say more about their experience, to go further, to give us a kind of further level of richness of data. So that really enabled us to sort of deepen the accounts, while still kind of keeping the person with a learning disability right at the centre of the work. So that tells you a little bit about kind of how we went about it. And I just very, very quickly want to introduce our participants to you, kind of who were our participants. And what comes now is just a summary of some of the kind of characteristics of our participants. So we interviewed 6 females and 16 male participants. Our participants were all different age ranges. We had some who were sort of 20 to 29, so sort of younger adults. Then we had our largest group of participants were between the ages of 30 and 39. But you can see that we also had participants who were older. So we had 5 between 40 and 49, and then 1 in the 50 to 59, 1 in the 60 to 69, and 2 in the 70 to 79 age range. So we really did get to meet and speak to people of all different ages. Most of the people that we spoke to were white British, and 2 of the people that we spoke to were of mixed heritage. So 1 who was white and black Caribbean, and 1 who was white and black African. This slide shows us the time that our participants spent in hospital. So that blue segment there tells us that 11 of our participants spent between, less than a year to 5 years in hospital. And all the rest of our participants, so the other half of our participants, spent more than 5 years in hospital. So 4 spent 6 to 10 years, 2 spent 11 to 15 years, 2 spent 16 to 20 years, 2 21 to 25 years, and 1 spent 36 to 40 years in hospital. So I think that really gives a sense of, the variety of, how long people had that kind of experience of hospital. And this next slide tells us a bit more information about that. We can see here that 10 of our participants had a sort of single long stay in hospital. So they were admitted to hospital and then they stayed in that hospital for whatever time period it was for them. Whereas other people had a slightly different experience, and they had a long stay in hospital, but they didn't just have one, they had more than one long stay. 6 of our participants had more than one long stay in hospital. And so that would have involved them being admitted to one hospital, then going back to the community, and then going back into a hospital setting. So 6 people had that experience, and 6 had a similar experience, but for a sort of shorter stay in hospital. And 1 had a single short stay in hospital. And of course, this different kind of relationship people had with how long they were in hospital and how many times they were in hospital really affected the stories that they told us, both about that time in their lives, but also about what it was like for them now. And another thing that really, I suppose, affected people's experience of hospital and experience of living in the community was whether they had a forensic history. So 15 of our participants didn't have a history with forensic services, and 7 did have that history with forensic services. And some of those 7 continued to have some community orders or other kind of restrictions on what they could do in the community kind of going forwards. So as I say, I hope this has given you a bit of a kind of flavour of our participants. We will get to meet some of our participants a little bit later on in the day, and in talking through the results, I hope to really kind of bring to life some of our participants' experiences. But for now, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to hand over to our wonderful expert by experience consultation group, and Sam, Kirsty, Gary and Bertam.
Before we do that, Helen, we've just had a question in the chat that said, would you include more people from different ethnicities if you did this again?
That was an aim for this piece of research. We wanted to include as much diversity in our participant group as we could. You know, and I think that is a tricky thing to do. But that is certainly something, thank you, Gary, for kind of for pointing out and holding in mind, and it's something we're very, very aware of. So thank you for that question. Were there any other questions, Susie? I didn't manage to see things in the chat.
No, that was the only question from this section. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll hand over to Sam.
Thank you, Helen. Okay, let me share my screen a second. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, we can see it, Sam.
Okay.
I can't see anything.
You can't see anything?
No.
And I saw Fiona had a hand up.
Oh, now I can see it. It was a faux pas, Sam. I just got the wrong button, but yeah, I was just putting my thumb up.
No worries. Okay. So hello everyone, and just do that to help me. Welcome, and just going to talk to you about the role of the expert by experience consultation group in the research, some of the things that we did, and how we did it. So I'm Sam Prowse, and I'm the chair of the expert by experience consultation group. Today we've got Gary and Kirsty with us. So just wondered if they would like to introduce themselves.
Yeah, I'm Gary Borley, and I did put in the chat who I was. I've been a self-advocate for 37.5 years, and I'm the founder of the People First movement in '84, and I have also been founder of the Learning Disability England, and my role is the membership engagement lead and self-advocacy spokesperson.
Thank you, Gary. Kirsty, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Kirsty Warwick. I am an expert by experts within Herts County Council. I'm on a project called Making Positive Youth on here.
Thank you, Kirsty. In the county council, you do some work on the co-production board, is that right?
Yes, I'm I'm the coordinator of the Learning Disability Corporate Dancing Board as well. And I
Brilliant.
also work with the health team in Harperbury County Council as well.
Thank you, Kirsty. So you do a wide range of things.
Yeah.
So it was really good, and just apologies from Bertan. Bertan wasn't able to make today, but he's been a really important part of the project as well, and challenged us to a lot of different things, thinking about diversity. Gary, that last question you asked, something that Bertan was very passionate about with his background, and was very clear to share that. So just to recap of the group and who we are. So it's a group made up of people with learning disabilities who are paid for their work and their time, which is really important. And the group has offered lots of help and support to the researchers. Was there anything else you wanted to add on that, Kirsty or Gary?
It really important to work with other parts of country, so we work with people in Norfolk. We can engage with a wider range of people.
Yeah, really important. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, I'm down from Kent, so I think it's different in different parts of the country wherever you go, and you're getting people out of long stay institutions. We don't tend to have a lot of big institutions in Kent, but when I was in Norfolk, I did some work for People First Norfolk, and I went to look at work with people at Little Plumstead Hospital. So I did some work there.
Thank you. And I think what's really important to remember, we started this project in the pandemic, and it was a real challenge. You know, we had a delay, but actually it presented opportunities as well. Technology enabled us to reach out in a wider way. So, you know, that's something to be thankful for in a way, but really important to reflect. So the group has met.
I just say.
Yes, Kirsty, go for it.
I just going to say on your point, Sam, about our meeting up in Yorktown. It's very important to us to connect with other people, and we can talk about how people are feeling, because in Corona time it was difficult for everyone, and we can see people, not in person but online.
And they were really, really important conversations earlier on into the research, because the research team came to us and we were presenting different scenarios, talking how they would help. And I think that was really important. So the group ideally met every 3 months. There were a couple of delays. We had an occasion where I had COVID once. There was another occasion I had COVID. But really thankful for the time. We had some joint meetings with the steering group to make sure that you know, there was a good link between those. So as I said, most of these meetings have been online, so it has been a bit strange, but actually we have had the opportunity to meet in person, which will show you some of those in a couple of slides time. I wanted to put this next slide in as a thank you, and it's a thank you to Gary, Kirsty, Bertan, Michael, Raja. Have I forgotten anyone? Probably, but equally the support team around us as well. Louisa, you've been brilliant. Silvana, Helen, Annabelle, Pashtana, and then we had Georgie as well. You know, the group couldn't exist without that support and the infrastructure. But what this group brought is it brought a lot of bright ideas. I'll never forget Kirsty's idea of a tour bus, and actually reflecting back on that last night, I think actually we have done a bit of a tour bus. We have gone out and about. So, you know, you may have experienced some of my driving, Kirsty. when we've gone to different places. So, you know, we have done different bits that have been really exciting. On this next slide, you know, we've covered so much and it's really hard to capture it in such a short period. I'll come to you in a second, Gary.
No.
And I would say that we've come up with so many great ideas, and the most important thing for me is this research doesn't come and sit on a shelf. And what this is about making this research as accessible as possible. And to just see the wonderful animation, going back to that earlier, that was really wonderful, and they were conversations that we had really early on about how to make that. Gary, did you want to come in?
Yes, and this research project has been going for 2 or maybe more years, and so it was developing over time and networking a lot.
Yes, really important.
And we had that trip into, was it Milton Keynes, and we had the clinical psychologists.
Yeah, so I've got those in a couple of slides' time, so we can talk more about those.
And that was good, because it was also a chance to meeting the team face to face.
Yeah, it was a bit strange, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I didn't know how small you were, Sam.
I'm small. Okay, I'll take that. Thank you.
I'm sure he means me, Sam. I'm sure he means how small I am.
I'm just going to comment. But we had a lot of really important discussions as well, thinking about the importance of thanking people for taking part in the research. And it's wonderful we've got some people here that were interviewed, and we know how emotional it is telling your stories, and that's really important that we recognise that, and we just didn't want you to feel like I'm having to tell my story again. What we hope and we will do is make this research go a long way to support people. So I'm going to jump onto the next slide. And I'm not going to go over these in great detail because I know we've got Mark on the call, and Mark's going to talk a bit more of the family project a bit later. But just wanted to touch upon Kate. So Kate came to us as a student, and we've been really blessed with making positive moves to have lots of different strands of other research projects. So Kate was coming to us to look at the angle from what it's like to support people, being support workers, managers who are supporting people living in their own homes. And she wanted to come and talk to us to kind of help choose what questions. So we're able to use different things that have happened in our own lives, thinking about what kind of questions are important to ask. And these were really important. So Kate met with us twice. She was really lovely the way she's explained here about coming up with lots of great ideas that she hadn't thought of. You know, asking questions in a way that's kind of good. I think often professionals are very good at making questions too long and not keeping them simple. And so actually coming up with questions that could be simplified and hopefully better understood. So Kate's hoping to get started soon, and if you want to find more, you can contact her there. So that was really good. Really brief stop on the families project, because it will be talked about later on. The group helping with working out terminology of what complex needs means, you know, and then being able to come back to the group and with the findings of the research on that, and those discussions helped with the thinking, the recommendations. So really great that we've been able to do that, and really great these events that we've had in person. So Gary, you weren't at this one, but you were there the day afterwards, weren't you? And this is the social history of learning disabilities, and their theme about what was community now and what was it in the past. Like when I saw this opportunity, I was like, this is where we have to go, because it is what our research is telling us. And it was good to be thinking about the research as we went along. So that was amazing. And then this was the psychologists working across Hertfordshire, Buckinghamshire and Essex, and guest speakers on that day. And it was good to go. We had the scare, so I had COVID again the week before, and what that we a little bit of panic, but we, you know, I was better and negative at that point, so it was great to go along. But just wanted to ask Gary, Kirsty, was there anything you wanted to add about these events in person?
It was
I
good.
would
Go on, Kirsty.
I would like to say that we get to meet so many people with so many ideas, and we could come back to our meeting and think we could talk about what we saw. It's really good, and we make some very inspiring people at the conferences, especially in Milton Keynes. I mean, we meet some incredible people in Milton Keynes.
We really did, and you know, we had challenges that came to us, and that was great to have challenges, because actually it's always a learning process through whatever you do in life. Nothing stays the same, and to find out that wide range of different things. So just wanted to say thank you, and if anyone's got any quick questions for us, and if not, if we don't get time to answer them now, we'll get back to you with those. Take peace and quiet is quite good, isn't it? Or is it?
That could be a bad thing.
It could be, but let's think positively.
Any questions appear in the chat for this section, Sam?
There was one question that came in a bit after we started that I think was for Helen, but I don't think there's been any for this section. Helen, would you like me to read your question?
Yes, apologies.
Yeah?
I should have been keeping an eye on the
So
chat.
there was one that popped up just after you finished. I think I missed it as well, saying, in future studies, is it possible to consider measuring the severity of learning disabilities?
Okay, yeah. So that certainly was something that was, I guess, a part of the design of this study. We wanted to include all those people with learning disabilities who had capacity to consent to take part in the research. So that did include people with sort of mild learning disabilities and moderate learning disabilities. But it did mean that people with more kind of profound or multiple needs were not able to be a part of the main Making Positive Moves project. Later on, Mark Mulholland is going to talk to us a bit about the Making Positive Moves family project, which was the kind of first step in the jigsaw to ensure kind of wider inclusivity of people who were not able to sort of consent to take part in the kind of major study. And it's something that we've really kind of thought about and been very aware of right from the first steering group, where Viv Cousins from the Challenging Behaviour Foundation, really brought this to our attention and, ensure that it stayed right at the kind of the front of our minds throughout. And that's been, one of the wonderful things about kind of working with the Expert by Experience consultation group, working with our steering group, is that it's really kind of pushed the research and made sure that we are always kind of acting to our values and doing what we say we're going to do. So that's a sort of a bit of an answer to that. But we'll hear a bit more about the Founding Project later on.
Thanks, Helen. We have had a couple of questions come through now as well. So one from David saying, what have the group found most helpful and what are they most proud of? So that's for Gary, Sam and Kirsty.
You want to go first, Gary or Kirsty?
Yeah, it's understanding, trying getting more and more people with a learning disability to become researchers. It's not just here, but Leeds University are working on a subject of getting more people into being researchers, but and also making sure that people with a learning disability who are researchers get paid the full rate of pay, and which is a difficult issue at any time, because some people get paid in vouchers, and there's got to be more done and more respect about whatever role people take in doing in research are respected and valued for the work they do.
That's great, Gary. Thank you. Is there anything you wanted to add, Kirsty?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think it's what biggest the team is that we can be broader of who we support, because we can go to places and meet, we can do video courses, so we get to know what other projects, and we could get to speak to the wider range of people who out there. I think it'd be a proudest moment for us, and maybe going to the Learning Disability Conference in Milton Keynes.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kirsty. So for me, I would say I'm most proud of the group and the resilience that the group has had, because some of the stories we've heard have been very traumatic in a lot of ways. To hear that the stories of what people have been through it is hard, and it's important that we recognise that. So I'm really proud of the group for that. I'm really proud of the bright ideas that people have come up with. Dream big. It's always better to dream big and scale that dream down than have no dream. So it's always good to have that ambition. And then I've just seen the second question there from Eleanor about the challenges. That kind of links in a little bit, the emotion. I think actually time is a challenge as well. You know, we've had a real small snapshot of people's lives as a group. We've worked a lot together, maybe a little bit more time. And I'm a people person. I prefer to see people in person, but we've worked really well at what we've done.
Thank you. I just want to read out my comment so that Kirsty, Sam and Gary can hear it, where I wrote on behalf of all of the research team, really, that the ECG have been incredibly important to us in the research. They have provided us with guidance and advice, sort of consultation at all points along the way. We've met, you know, so many times now with the group, and every single meeting that we have, there's something new we take away from that to kind of take into our steering group and put into practice in the research. So I think they definitely have challenged us to think big about how we make a difference in the lives of people with learning disabilities. And so many ideas have been generated by Gary, Kirsty, Sam and Bertan and the others that have been part of the group over the time of the research. So just on behalf of the research team, thank you so much for your contribution. And I think it's time for coffee, which probably everyone needs right now.
Yeah.
We're slightly behind time. Joan says, yes, we need a cup of tea over here in Bishop Stortford. So we're slightly behind time. So if we can aim to get back around 10 past, does that sound doable to people? 10 minutes, stretch your legs, get a coffee, and then we'll get going again. Thank you so much, everyone.
There you go. Okay.
Wait for a few more people to be back, and Louisa and Joan.
We're here.
Okay, don't forget to stop recording at this point.
Stop recording, yes. Oh,
Yeah.
did somebody stop it before the break? Oh, no,
No.
I didn't, because that was me. Oh, that'd be nice, people. We'll try and cut that off the end of the one when we share it. Right, I'm stopping the
Before
recording
we-
now.